pay for the water to equal the retail rate that's in effect at the time. The other thing that we've done, a few months ago, we talked about some donation of assets. We had some saws that we were able to get with some grant funding. And so we've added that equipment to our equipment list. Now the equipment list, this is not, we don't run a rental yard. We don't share with, all of our neighbors, but we can make our equipment available to other jurisdictions if need be. That typically happens on very rare occasions. But we also do some private work where a contractor comes to us and says we need a water line, and we actually have our staff build the line. And if we're using our equipment there, we use that equipment rate to determine how much we're charging for the work that we do. So those are the only two changes that we're making to the fees and charges for this year. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yes, Commissioner Stewart.
How much revenue has CRW generated in the last year in regards to this issue?
With regards to the equipment rental?
Yes, what we're talking about here.
The fees and charges booklet also has all of the water rate revenue, but if we look just at the equipment rental, we don't have that many private projects going on. As you know, the economy is still pretty slow. But I think we've probably billed out, a couple $1,000s. Typically, we get a deposit at the beginning of the project, and then we account for the work and the activity as it goes along. And towards the end of the year, we will analyze all of that, and we will bill people to date so that we'll move that dollar amount from deposit to revenue. We just do that 2 or 3 times a year. We don't do that every month.
What's the most current dollar amount that you know that CRW has billed?
I don't have that number in my head, but I'm sure it's a couple thousand, maybe $4,000.
A month?
No, total, for the year.
For the year?
Mm-hmm.
Would, for example, Sunrise, if they needed to borrow a backhaul, come over and rent our backhaul?
They could. That happens.
Backhoe, excuse me?
That happens very rarely, but yes, they could.
What about our, let's see, we have a dump truck too, if I remember right, don't we?
Yes, we do.
So they'd be able to come over and rent that? Okay, thank you very much.
Any more comments or questions? Anyone from the audience? I think that is on the list.
Thank you, Chair Silla, Patricia Holloway, your chair. I would like to just present a chart to the board. The discussion here tonight has not addressed in any way.
You've done that.
And I just need one for myself, getting to the audience. The issue that has not been addressed in this is the fact that it does include the rate increase that was voted on last year. And I just wanted to point out that come May the 1st, the total rate increase, base rate increase for residential users is now 57%. The base rate increase for commercial and multifamily is only 29%. And when you add the base rate and the lowest volume rate for the residential users, they've been flat to 75.25%. And
I don't believe that's what we're discussing, that's the, no.
It
You're making
is-
a motion on the floor. That I could see.
Chair
This is about
Silla,
rates.
may I correct Mr. Henderson? The motion that is before the board, the resolution that is before the board, covers the water rates which go into effect May 1st, as well as things like dump trucks and so on, which are de minimis amounts of money. This is the big ticket item. So,
Your point is that we should increase the rate for users by 75%.
no, you, that's already happened. And what I would like to suggest is that those residential users, rather than getting hit with the 75.25%, that the board consider, in fact, not hitting them with the 15.25% this year, which goes across the board on top of the 42.75% base rate hit they got hit with last year. So that is simply my suggestion and recommendation to the board.
Thank you for your comment.
Question. I'm unclear as to how that raise was passed through. Who was it that passed that 75% increase you're saying?
That is correct.
And
It
you
was-
were on the board at that time? On
Uh,
the commission?
So may I answer this question? I was, Mr. Cannon, and.
So in other words,
and
you
the
were a
raise,
part
I
of the
will
group
answer
that
your
passed that?
question. I will answer your question, sir.
I just asked a simple question. Were you on the
The-
board when you passed that? When that was passed?
I was on the board.
Did you approve
And
that?
it
Did
was
you approve
labeled,
that motion?
Mr. Kalani, I understand where you're going with this, and so I'm going to get the correct information out. The correct information is that the increase was titled 14.25% in each of 2 years. That was not the increase that was in fact in the numbers. And I didn't realize it until I ran the numbers myself and found out, to use Commissioner Cardwell's famous term, that, and I'll only speak for myself, that I had been snookered on the numbers. So when I voted yes, I was voting for a 14.25% increase in each of 2 years, not a 75% hit on our most vulnerable, lowest consumption customers.
Then, you're saying that you didn't study the plan beforehand? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying.
I'm just asking.
I made the mistake of trusting Mr. Moore and Ms. Bright. Obviously, I was in error.
You're sure of that?
That's true.
The ratepayer needs to understand what we're talking about at this particular point in time. While Ms. Holloway's information is absolutely correct, and I was snookered myself also too when the figures were put forward, and documentation will at a future date show that at future court appearances. We need to remind that the resolution, or this agenda item number 11, is good. It benefits the ratepayers. There's no doubt about if you pay $10 for a piece of equipment today, the chances of it costing $10 tomorrow is minimal. So we need to continue to take and follow, as we have year after year, and raise the user fee for things that we lend out. And keep the good neighbor policy going, so that if somebody needs a backhoe, a dump truck or something, then we have it there. It's in good maintenance repair. We can lease it or rent it to them, and we don't have to worry about them becoming injured because we have failed to maintain our equipment. Thank you, Ms.
Oh,
White.
thank you for jerking us back on the agenda. Any more comments or questions? Yes.
So, Brian Johnson. So, if one of my tractors breaks down, can I come rent one here? Huh? And Carol, is my water rate gonna go up 75%?
The rate increase that's effective May 1st is 14.25% across the board, all tiers.
Thank you.
Any more comments or questions? Will you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Humberstone?
Aye.
Commissioner Kalani?
Yes.
Commissioner Sterling?
Yes.
And Commissioner Silva?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. We're now on the items that were on the consent agenda, are now on the, are now action items. CA1, could we have a motion, please?
Move to approve payroll and accounts paid.
Second.
Carol, you want to go ahead? Or any comments or questions? Go ahead.
I'd like to see the documentation for the expense, refer to page 4, check number 77922, 3/12/2013 to Phillips Law Office, legal services for February, statement, $15,257. I think the ratepayers need to see the actual documentation that was put forth in regards to that bill.
Thank you. We'll see about getting those right. Carol?
I really don't have a presentation for this, but I'm certainly available to answer any questions that anybody might have.
Any more comments or questions? Anyone from the audience wishing to testify? Seeing none, call the roll.
Commissioner Hubbardston?
Aye.
Commissioner Kalani?
Aye.
Commissioner Sterling?
No.
And Commissioner Silva?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-1.
Now the item titled CA2, could we have a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I move that the board authorize and direct President SOA or CRW's General Counsel Phillips Law Office to inform James D. Huffman in writing that Mr. Huffman does not represent Clackamas River Water, and direct Mr. Huffman to dismiss the appeals that he initiated in the Oregon Court of Appeals in the name of Clackamas River Water, case numbers A-153696 and A-153697 within 7 days of the date of the letter to him. I further move that the board authorize CRW's legal counsel to take appropriate action in court and with the Oregon State Bar in the event that Mr. Huffman fails to dismiss the appeals within the time provided.
Second.
Any comments or questions? Commissioner Sterling?
Once again, this is a waste of ratepayers' money. The ratepayers have nothing to do with this issue. That is first in front of the Supreme Court, which stated that the issue could be taken and heard in front of the appeals court first. That's how come the mandamus was denied. That's all that it is. It didn't make any other ruling except for that, to put it into the appeals court. To continue to spend ratepayers' money for these legal issues when they are not liable for them, period. It's just ludicrous to continue to do it. And the other thing, and I'll mention this just as a sidebar, I have the document, but I don't have it with me, President SOA, but I have an affidavit that's signed by you authorizing Mr. Huffman to be the legal counsel for CRW. And that document is in the file that was in front of the Supreme Court and will be in front of the appeal court. So I'm a bit concerned about that because it leads towards a direction of a legal term called perjury.
Thank you for your comments. I have a question for Mr. Moore. Is what this motion proposed to do, have Mr. Phelps' law office do, is that within our free tenure?
Yes.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions? We have someone from the audience wishing to testify. Cindy?
Cindy Lewis Wolfman, ratepayer, co-chair of the Clackamas CPO. I'm glad to see that something to this order is coming forward from the board, and hope that it gets approved by this board. I don't doubt that Mr. Sterling is interested in making sure that Mr. Huffman maintain his efforts on his and Ms. Holloway's behalf. But for Mr. Huffman to do that as a representative of CRW would be inappropriate. And I don't see any problem with him representing parties of the lawsuit. And I hope that he's given direction to do the same. Should he continue to try and represent the ratepayers of CRW, there might be something that the ratepayers could have to say about that. And I'm not sure what that would be, but perhaps we would follow suit to what you are indicating that you want your attorney to do. I think that the ratepayers spoke loudly what they wanted to happen and what direction that we're looking towards this board to take the business of CRW. I'm very serious about making sure that the legal matters go away, not keep being presented and presented and presented again. A loss is a loss.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment. Any more comments or questions? Pat Howell.
Thank you, Chair Soa. This is just too much fun not to get into. The legal issue that is before the Court of Appeals is the same legal issue that was before the Supreme Court, which is the question, there are two questions. One question is, was the meeting of October 30th, 2012, in which Commissioner Sterling and I made the appointment of Mr. Monroy, and then Mr. Monroy and Mr. Sterling and I made the appointment of Mr. Soa to the CRW board. That is the first legal question. The second legal question is, does Clackamas County have the legal right to appoint more than, assuming that that was, the court rules that that was not an allowable thing to do, then the second question is, can Clackamas County appoint 3 commissioners rather than simply the 1 commissioner it would have taken to bring it to a quorum? And so that is the legal question. And the issue is with Clackamas County, the issue is not with Clackamas River Water. And so it is a justiciable issue. Judge Jones already ruled that it was. It's an appropriate issue to be before the appellate court. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more comments or questions? Call the roll, please.
Commissioner Hubbardston?
Aye.
Commissioner Kalani?
Aye.
Commissioner Sterling?
No,
And Commissioner Soa?
Aye.
Motion carries 3-1.
We'll now go on to informational reports. We've got a highway built yet.
They're working on it. Agenda item number 12. Basically, this is a quick summary of where we're at for the project. They had their bid opening on March 29th. And in this agenda item, I was able to at least give you the overall large cost. And the apparent low bidder was Construction Company for $53,219,440. I didn't say that, right? So you get the $53 million. That's the overall project. Last Friday, ODOT supplied us with the breakdown for our water line portion, which we are responsible for, and what they're responsible for. I did hand out a purple sheet, but I was not able to incorporate that into the original agenda item. And basically, and you can't read this, of course, that's the problem with big spreadsheets and other things, so that's why I didn't pull one out. But per construction, the total water line work, both reimbursable and non-reimbursable, was $500,000, $503,000. The reimbursable part, which ODOT will be paying for, is a $341,000 portion. Our responsible part is $162,000. We have a contract now currently already approved for $268,000, which we're obligated to pass that along to them, so they hold back in this construction period any remaining money or overages. It looks like we're going to be under, will be returned to our funds. So we came in a lot lower. You can see that the total pricing for several of the contractors were fairly competitive. There was 6, 7 bidders. I only tallied 4. So, and you'll see some zero line items in here. Those are the items that were originally anticipated, but was pulled because of non-conflicts. I showed the whole spreadsheet just for your knowledge. So we're sitting fairly good, a lot lower in budget than we thought.
What was that budget number again?
I believe it's about $268,000 that we have an obligation to ODOT on that contract. Fortunately, we're only going to be at 162.
Commissioner Turvey.
Are we going to be looking as ratepayers as a cost increase by the time ODOT and everybody gets Longfield Road and an overpass straightened out? It's difficult to interpret it, at least from the information that's available to the public, what specifically they're going to do. Of course, if they do an overpass, that wouldn't affect our water lines, would it?
Unfortunately,
It
overpasses, any changes, if our water line's in an area, yes. Overpasses require on-ramps, off-ramps, retaining walls.
Yeah.
We don't like our water lines buried 14, 15, 30 feet deep.
So they haven't said anything to you or to any of the other contractors about this Longfield Road overpass to get down into that industrial district?
Are we talking about the JTA project or another project?
No, it's, from what I understand, it's part of it. It's just
That's
trying to
all-
find,
it's all incorporated in the
trying to
project.
find the funding for it. Okay.
Yes, everything's incorporated into the JTA project as an alternative one. All the water line work associated with it is incorporated in these numbers.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report.
Okay.
Any more comments on that report?
Just came in.
Carol, can we have your financial report?
Okay, I'll start off this evening with the accounts receivable aging. As of March 31st, we had an outstanding balance of $188,000 in accounts receivable. As of this morning, it was closer to $100,000, so we have been collecting money the first couple of weeks of this month. And the balance is a little bit higher than the balance was in January, and we typically compare every other month because of our billing cycles. Our cash and investment position, we ended up March 31st with $8.7 million combined, the general checking account and the local government investment pool. The interest earnings for the LGIP are not included in this number, and I believe that's about $3,000 more that should be recorded there. I wanted to kind of give a little bit additional information on our cash position. So here is the cash position trends. I utilized Excel to put that trend line in, but because we bill every other month, we have an awful lot of peaks and valleys. So you can see those high months are when we are collecting money from the bills in the prior month. So you have in your reports, you have your budget to actual reports, and again, I'm displaying this graphically because I think the picture kind of shows it a little bit better. What I'm doing is comparing this fiscal year with the same time period of the past 4 fiscal years. So these are all through the end of February, and you can see that our water revenue this year is higher, and a portion of that is the rate increase that was in effect last May. But we've also had some higher consumption this year, particularly in the summer. Our summer was quite a lot drier than we had been seeing. And here's the kind of the towers for the expenditures, and we are keeping the expenditures down. This was based on the budget where we had done significant cuts. Again, the goal trying to improve our bottom line, our reserve balances. So this chart, we're 2/3 of the way through the budget, and this chart shows where we are compared with last year at the same time. Next month, I will be presenting the quarterly reports, the third quarter reports, because we'll be talking about activity through the end of March. And just for a general update, information for the board, we are completing preparation of the proposed budget. We do have the Budget 101 kind of informational meeting next Thursday during the day, and we anticipate having the budget document available for budget committee members to take with them when they leave. That gives everybody about a week to look through the document prior to the first budget meeting, which is April 25th. And one thing I wanted to advise the board and maybe get some feedback is we will have the March information available, so even though it has not been presented to the board, it won't be presented till the May 9th meeting. We would like to include that information in the budget document for the budget committee to review. Again, the budget, as soon as we hand it out to the budget committee, we will post it on the website, and we will have a copy here at the office for anybody in the public that wishes to take a look at it as well. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions or comments? If not, we'll go on to manager's report.
As you know, the management report is an activity report regarding the activities of the general manager and the staff. That we did meet with council concerning the CMGC contracts for the generator. We were at the point where we were preparing information for the board, and that we needed some additional advice, and you saw the results of those meetings that were presented by staff earlier. So I think we believe that we're on solid legal grounds to move forward. The other activity that we had is that we met with Sunrise, Mr. Hathorn, and to look at the continuation of our memorandum of understanding for the government relations person, who is Ms. Anderson. As you know, or may not know, as kind of a new board, we only pay her on a time and materials basis, and if we don't use her services, we don't pay anything. So, but we did renew that prior memorandum of understanding. I did jump over that we did provide the board in your packets with legal summaries and documents that we've received to date from the various courts regarding litigation that we're involved in. We also met with Mr. Collins from the South Fork Water Board, who's the general manager. We talked about several things. One is that most of us who source from the Clackamas River, we have an issue about where do we, if there were some mishap or if there were problems with sourcing water from the Clackamas River, where do we get alternative water? And we all seem to have the same problem. Mr. Collins has advised that he's planning in his budget some additional monies to begin exploring that. And the suggestion was that maybe we revise and reinstitute the joint operating plan. That's a document that's been around for quite some time, and that we collectively start talking about and maybe even sharing resources to really explore that option. So we're hosting a meeting here in a couple of weeks with all the general managers, and we will begin to talk about some of those issues as it relates to the Clackamas Basin. And so, and we've had 100% of the managers, including Lake Oswego, who have agreed to show up for that meeting. We met with Mr. Dwayne Kane, who's the marketing representative for PGE, who provided us with information regarding service rates for the year, and shared with us other information about PGE's activity. He's also the point person that we use on the generator project that helps us with internal communications with their corporation. Staff had, and with the board, I won't go into it in any detail, but we had the meeting with the board on the Carver Bridge and Well 1 a few days ago. I think that meeting went pretty well. And we're also talking about other CIP projects in anticipation of the upcoming budget meetings that we're going to be having with the budget committee, and then ultimately presenting to the board. We've also met with Mr. Frazier, who's the city manager for Oregon City, and Mr. John Lewis, who's their engineering manager, to talk about withdrawals and also talk about the ORS 190 activity. We again stated that even though they had asked us to wait until May to have those discussions, we've asked that they bring those more current, and I think that we reached a tentative agreement that, at least as it relates to the annexations and de-annexations, that we try to get something moving by June. Was that the right? Ish. Ish. But at least that's a more positive outcome than what we had in our prior meeting. So I feel encouraged that we can begin to get some of those issues taken care of. And so we also had a like meeting with the city manager of Milwaukee and his staff, talking about the same thing. And as we have a little bit different issue with Milwaukee in that there's issues around billing and some of the island annexations that the city of Milwaukee has undertaken. As you know, a couple of years ago, Milwaukee was working on their sewer projects, and so they annexed the streets but not the properties. But they still have the problem with how do they bill for service if they don't control the water issues. And so that's another issue that we're working with, and I think yes.
Just one correction. They annexed the right-of-ways, and right behind that, as people wanted service, those properties requesting sanitary service was annexed into the city. We've been tracking that, and per our water agreement with them, we continue to serve them water.
And yes, and one of the things we would be looking at with both Oregon City and Milwaukee is also revisiting, at least with Oregon City, I think there's two agreements, the South End Agreement and the Hops Agreement, that we really need to take another look at. We think it's dated. And we also talked with Milwaukee about revising the IGA that we had with them, and we will be talking to them about that agreement as well, and trying to get it updated. We have also discussed with staff who have expressed some concerns about personal information. And so what we are proposing to do here is to provide a service that will monitor their individual accounts in the event that there is some breach of personal security. And one of the things that we're proposing to do is, at least for the first year and possibly the second, is to offer some kind of a stipend for them to have to pay for those services. On the 26th, the board work session on rates and policy was requested in order to educate the board. That's the one that we were talking about that occurred. And the next phase now, this was really the FCS discussions that I believe Ms. Holloway was talking about earlier. They will be presenting their findings to the board on May 9th. And based upon that, then the board will have an opportunity to decide, because the whole issue of the rate study is something that both the rate committee and the CRW board had asked staff to engage in this year. And so we've got that underway, and we should be completing that as of May 9th, assuming that the board acts on the recommendations of the consultants and staff. We've experienced several vacancies over the last several months. We have now filled 2 of those positions in our fax organization, and we're currently recruiting for a position in our operations group, and hopefully within the next month or so we will have filled those positions. The operating policies and procedures that staff had been working on have now been distributed to all the employees. I believe we've had 100% signatures on those, and they are now been implemented. And the last item that I have is that the board had directed staff to recruit for a vacant position. We closed that recruitment on April 8th. We did not receive any applicants as it relates to that recruitment. We did get a late response from, I think you have it in front of you if I'm not mistaken, from a Mr. Merrill. So we have presented it to you for your consideration. And that completes the end of my report, Mr. Chairman.
One question, that application by Mr. Merrill, did that come by mail or direct to the office?
It came direct to the office. We have the envelope that it came in here. It came in.
Is there a postmark on that?
We have it 413. No, that's 413. We received it 413, 410. Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying you received it 410.
It doesn't have it.
April 8th.
April 8th is when it was mailed. So he may have misunderstood that possibility.
Well, the notice that we sent out said it had to be postmarked by April 8th, so.
It says applicants must be hand-delivered and received no later than 3:30 p.m. on April 8th. Or if mailed, must be postmarked, that's correct. That concludes my report.
Thank you. A couple people in the audience have said they wish to testify on the management report. Any more testimony? Okay.
I wrote in error, Mr. Chairman, I'm at number 15, not 14.
Thank you. Well, we go on to
Chair
Commissioner
Saul?
business.
Chair, so I was the other person?
Pardon?
I was the other person on 14.
Come forward then.
Thank you. Probably sufficiently on the record to know who I am right now. I would like to address in the manager's report, item A8, concerning the annexations, withdrawals, et cetera, with Oregon City. As Chair Sol was notified by mail and several other people, entities as well, between the registered voters for Oregon City and Clackamas River Water, there are close to 6,000 duplicates. Having determined that information, the next step was to compare Oregon City customers with the Clackamas River Water voter list, and to look at the annexation documents, which are all publicly available on the Metro website. And right now, on the CRW voter list, which is an issue, of course, in the May 2010 election, there are there are actually, to be specific, 2,852 addresses in both of those databases. And in reviewing the annexation documents, I've looked at quite a few, not all of them yet, because Oregon City had about 200 annexations from 1995 forward. It appears that as Oregon City annexed in territory, that the final order in most of those agreements stated that existing customers, which there were usually somewhere between 3 and 6, would be transferred to Oregon City when Oregon City and CRW worked out the billing transfer, and that all new customers belong to Oregon City. Hence, those new customers, of which there are close to 3,000, have never been in the CRW territory under the terms of the annexation final orders. And so I do believe that for this board, relative to item 8, that to believe that there are only 600 addresses is, quite frankly, you don't have all the information, and you need it, because having the information documented, should the election go forward with all of that in it, I do believe that it's reasonable to conclude that whomever at Clackamas River Water is responsible for maintaining the voter list, which according to Clackamas County, Metro, etc., is Clackamas River Water. I do think that you might be buying yourselves a problem, and Clackamas River Water voters need to know that right now, close to 3,000 Oregon City customers are voting on CRW issues in a territory that they're not in. And so if CRW ever goes out for a general obligation bond, for example, which, as I'm sure each of you is aware, requires a vote to approve, and Chair Soa's newspaper comments suggested that might be in the offing, that 25% of the people eligible to vote on obligating the property owners of Clackamas River Water Special District would be voting on obligating Clackamas River Water proper voters to put their own personal property assets at risk. And so I do strongly recommend that you take a look at those numbers. This is all public information obtained through public entities. And if no one has bothered to read the annexation final orders, I strongly recommend that you do so. Thank you, Chair Soa.
Thank you for your comments.
Can I ask a question of the manager?
Yeah.
A10, regarding potential for personal information being misused, that's all confidential, isn't it? Locked up generally.
The information that the employees are concerned about is confidential.
Well then, this seems to indicate that it's been compromised in some manner, shape, or form. Is that correct?
Well, there's a concern that it may be compromised.
Okay. So then we could be liable for considerable, some sort of a penalties.
The existing court order prohibits the holders of that information from using it. And that's one of the issues that's being appealed as we speak within the Court of Appeals.
So, and those holders are not with CRW now at this time?
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
The holders of that information are not a part of CRW at this time?
Not currently, no.
Any more questions?
Chair Sloy, if I may ask indulgence to address that since
We've given you your 3 minutes. Thank you for that. As far as under 15, talking about filling a board position, we will check this person out. Probably he did file postmarked material by the proper time. I don't believe the address he's given us is in our water district. We'll check that out to see if that's a business address or whether he works it out. And then the board will move forward as rapidly as possible on appointing a new commissioner in the next couple of weeks.
Chair Stone? This is the item that I had meant to put down.
Say anything before I can't hear you.
Sorry, Chair Stone. Cindy Lewis Holcomb, representing CPO of Clackamas CPO. I would ask that as you are looking to draft some additional, I think I heard that correct, additional submissions for a board position that's vacant now, I would ask that you potentially use the various CPOs out in the neighborhoods that CRW represents to pass the word out about this position being open. One, it's cost effective, it will not cost the board any money to utilize that as a communication method. It may take a little longer to get a response, but I think that making a wider effort to bring more people into interview and to give a broader appeal to our ratepayers out there to try and get some new blood into this process would be well received. While the articles there was an article in the Clackamas Review, and there may have been a mention of it in another article in the Oregonian, I think that there hasn't really been a lot of notice by ratepayers out there that this position needs to be filled now. I think that folks are kind of letting things settle. That's the comment I've gotten in my area, and maybe to see what's really kind of going on. One person actually said to me that they're going to wait and see what happens with the election before they put their name forward for anything to do with CRW. And so I would request that you take some time in recruiting someone to the board and let the ratepayers know that even though it's a position that was vacated through a not normally dealt with method, a recall method, that things are in good hands with the people that are on the board as a majority, and that the board is settling into doing business and not doing monkey business. So if you could give them some time out there I know Clackamas CPO would be more than happy to beat the drums to find some people for you. So please take that under consideration.
Thank you for your comment. Our motive for sending the public notice out and getting it in the various newspapers was to try to get somebody on board before the budget committee process started. So we may not be able to meet that, so we may have to come back later and decide what we're going to do. But first, we'll check this gentleman out and see if he's an applicant or not. Next, item 16, has everybody now got their calendar straight about the changes? Mr. Kalani could make the regular date for, was it May? June board meeting, so that meeting will be changed to another date. What is?
It was the day before, so it'd be on June 12th rather
June
than the
12th.
13th.
Any other comments on that? Staff's been sending out material every few days, but the changes of budget schedule and everything, so. Commissioner assignments, anyone have a report to turn in for an assignment they did last month?
My reports should be attached to everybody's agenda, so mine is turned in. Do we have a moment for commissioner comments?
Pardon?
Do we have a moment for commissioner comments?
Sure.
Ms. Holloway raised an issue at our last work session, and I did a little homework, a little help, and just for everybody's clarification, a work session is not considered a public meeting for purposes of notice or for keeping of minutes. A public meeting is the convening of any governing body for which a quorum is required to make or deliberate towards a decision on any matter or to gather information. So when we're having a work session, though we still will make them public meetings, it's not a mandatory thing for that kind of a meeting. Likewise, when it comes to keeping of minutes, minutes have to be kept when it is a proper meeting, as in having a quorum and moving towards deliberation and decision-making. Otherwise, minutes do not have to be kept. And that's all that I have, sir.
Finally, do we have any more? Oh, you're right.
Are we to understand that in a work session, the commission, the Board of Commissioners can make decisions and
No.
rulings?
No,
That's what he just said.
no, it is not.
We're not
He
working.
said they had a quorum.
Can you hear me?
That's a regular meeting, a quorum and making decisions. A work session, we don't have to have a quorum, and we don't make any decisions.
That's what I said.
Yeah, that's what I thought. But it still needs to be notified to the public.
It actually doesn't even need to be notified if it's a work session in which no decisions are being made and a quorum is not required. That said,
What's the ORS that you're using?
comes under, it starts under 192-620, and then it's also reflected in the Attorney General's rules, for lack of a better word, called the Spirit of Oregon's Public Meetings Law. And he uses the same language on those issues.
So you're using 192-620 as a basis for saying that there's,
I'm just reading what the statute and
well,
what the
yeah,
ordinance,
no,
what the Attorney
that,
General
we need to make
says.
sure the ratepayers understand what you're talking about.
So it's a word, like I said, our practice is still going to be that we will notify the public that there is a meeting going on and that we're doing a work session. That said, the point is it's not mandatory and neither is keeping minutes under those conditions.
I hate to think that the Board of County Commissioners has been wrong all along.
Any more public comment? If not, we're adjourned.